Always forget to add this music at the beginning. Got about a minute. We're going to get started. Be getting going in 2 seconds. I am just making sure we got everything. Oh, it's playing the video again. I thought I didn't loop it. Oh, whatever. Well, what's up, everybody? We're live. Still adjusting lighting here. Trying to get everything good. Audio sounds good. All right, we are going to get started here. Got a couple topics. Got a Saturday show. May have a show tomorrow. I'm not 100% sure if we're going to be doing a show or not. Had yesterday's show. I thought it went pretty well. Like I said, we were trying out a couple things. We were trying out new lighting setup. I've got a new mic on the way, which is exciting. It's going to be like a boom mic. And actually, I'm not even sure if that mic is going to sound much different than the iPhone mic. I'm not 100% sure there, but we'll see. So this show today. What's up, everybody? Welcome back. We've got an exciting show today. We've got three main topics we're going to be talking about. We have the Panini Elite Football that just released recently. Panini also came out with a pair of sneakers. They teamed up with a company that I'll talk about once we get to that topic. And then also a Beckett partnership. It's good to see Beckett is finally doing anything. So that's something we're going to get into once we get into that topic as well. Also, if you're looking to play some daily fantasy with props, make sure you check out Prize Picks. I put the link in the description and in the comments for Prize Picks. $100 deposit, $100 100% match up to $100 deposit. Make sure you go check that out. Thank you all, and we'll get into this first topic here. Panini Donruss Elite Football. It's one of the first products. I think it might be the first product that's going to have rookie autographs for this year. So I think there are still a couple products that are coming out from last year's football. And then we're kind of getting started, which is, like I said before, I think at some point Panini just needs to like bite the bullet and just say here, and they wouldn't literally, I don't think they would ever do this, but they just need to bite the bullet and say, here are all the products we're going to release the rest of last year's product. Like I think there's a bunch of basketball that still is coming out. I don't know. It's probably a supply chain thing. It's probably still catching up from the pandemic. It's probably also catching up a little bit from like demand not being as high compared to when like the pandemic in general. I think they probably were scheduling a lot of these either new products or they're bringing back products or just scheduling it kind of in general. They were probably scheduling them during the height of everything, during the height of, the pandemic when sports cards were as popular as maybe they'll ever be. I'm not 100% sure if we ever get back to that point. I think we probably do, but it's going to be a lot slower. And I don't think there's going to be, maybe there won't be as much of an opportunity to flip just everything, just be able to buy and sell everything with crazy profits. But the one thing I think with Donruss Elite that I do like about it is that I think Panini and Topps, and I'll get into, the Panini, there's a Panini sneaker that's either going to be in another video or in the live stream if you're watching this. But the sneaker, I think Panini, they need to figure out how to brand their products, and it might even be a little bit too late, to be honest, because there's rumors that Fanatics is buying them. I'm not 100% sure if that's true or not. But so what I think I like about Panini Donruss Elite is that they're using branding, the Donruss branding, which is really is just the namesake. Like it really doesn't have much to do with Donruss in general. But I do think expanding on the Donruss brand, I think is a good idea. I think the expansion of certain brands is one of the strategies that I would use. And maybe I don't know how Topps would be able to do it because Topps doesn't really like, they have Topps and Topps Chrome, but like with Donruss, for example, they have like Donruss Elite, they have clearly Donruss, they have Optic, which is Donruss Optic, I believe. So I think expanding on the brands that they have is probably one of the strategies I would try to go with. Like instead of coming up with new brands all the time, like I would just try to tie the brands into existing brands. And I would say even if like, I think I've talked about this in the past with branding, I would look at it and say, if you're going to come out, like, I think that they should make each time of the year a specific brand that's coming out. So like for 3 to 4 months, it would be Prizm. So it would be like, it's Prizm season where it's like, I'm making up products at this point, but Prizm comes out and then they come up with some other Prizm brand. They come up with some other Prizm product and then they come up with another one. And for 3 months, the Prizm products are the only ones that come out. And I don't know if they'd be able to do this with some of the higher end products because like National Treasures and Immaculate and Impeccable and Flawless and all that kind of stuff. I don't necessarily think they would be able to brand those together at this point. I think those brands have kind of transcended the being able to bring them back and put them in a box. Now, also Panini at the same time, like who really knows what's going to happen with Panini after the football and basketball licenses expire and they go to Fanatics, which is now Tops. We'll see sort of what happens there. But like, what they do with Donruss, for example, like I think that I almost wish that they would stagger the releases where it's like throughout the year the releases get more important as well. So like, I'm going to go back and I'll use Donruss for an example because they have a bunch of different brands. You start the year with Donruss. I almost think that they should make it where it's like the brands sort of grow, where the brand is like more important as you go along throughout the year, where like then Prizm, I think if they came out with Prizm during the Super Bowl, that's how I would brand Prizm. I would brand it as like the cards that you need to get. And also that would also help with Prizm because I think then you could include players that potentially might not be in Prizm. I would be okay with Prizm coming out later on in the year, as long as like it's not coming out after the next year's draft for the previous year's players. Like, and that's sort of what we've seen with a lot of these products with Panini. And like I said, they would never do this, but they should just bite the bullet for 1 year and say, here are all the products that we still have to release from last year. Here they all are. Unfortunately, we couldn't really release them the way that we wanted to. Here they are. Or put them somehow combine all of them and put them into like a Chronicles product or something along those lines. Like, I don't know, maybe start with Chronicles. Like if I were Panini and I were to do this strategy, I would go Chronicles would be the first release of the year for basketball and football. And then I would do well other for pro products because obviously they have the collegiate products, which I think is that strategy would be a little bit different. I don't love those products. I would almost, it could even be that they do all the collegiate products, which is, I guess, what they technically do. They do that, I guess, but it would be like they brand a few months with just collegiate products, and then maybe I don't know if they would be able to brand it with Chronicles products or how they would do it. But then you go Donruss, then you go Select, probably like that would be my next brand, and then you go Prizm, and that's how I would break up the year when it comes to products, that how I would release them. And I've always said that I would love to see like a paper Prizm product, and I get that Prizm has sort of branded itself as like a chrome product, a premium chromium type product, but I think what I would like to see is them expand on some of the more popular brands rather than I would rather see them expand down on some of the more popular products than try to expand up on some of the less popular products, if that makes sense. Like, I would like a paper Prizm product more than I would like a Clearly Donruss. Like, I don't necessarily love Clearly Donruss. I think it's a fine product if you're breaking or if you're opening it, it's fine. But I think that they need to expand that brand a little bit differently. And I don't know, maybe at the beginning of the year, that means like Optic is part of like each. I guess I'm sort of brainstorming as we're making this video here a little bit, but it would be like, the Don, because Optic is part of Donruss. It's Optic Donruss. That would be like the big product that comes out. Like, I don't know when they would start it. It probably would be, I'd say probably after the draft is when I would do the collegiate products up until the start of the year, and almost like it would be like the preseason schedule. And then like once the season starts, if we're looking at Donruss for this example, the Donruss season, Optic would come out around the time the start of the year, and then Select. And I don't know if they would try and brand Select and expand that brand a little bit, or if there are other products that they would put. But then like Prizm, I would come out with that product during the Super Bowl, to be honest. And I would come out with all these big products. Like, I would come out with Prizm for basketball during the NBA finals. I mean, it almost seems like, I can't believe I've never thought of that. Like, it seems like something that would be pretty obvious, in my opinion, to try and come out with these products like around when the sports are at the peak of people interested in them. Or All-Star weekend should also be like, there should be more products coming out during All-Star weekend, and it should be and that's where I think I've talked about this baseball and I think football, not exactly because football is sort of at the end of the season, but like for basketball, it's in the middle of the season, come out with a product during the All-Star break, and then somehow integrate that into what's going on. Like I don't know if I were Panini, I would try and sponsor one of the All-Star events, like how it's the Sprite Slam Dunk contest. I would try and sponsor whatever event. And I mean, if you really want to get crazy, you even could say like, here's a box of cards. One of the challenges is the first one to find a card or something like that, or to find a player or something along those lines. Like do even maybe like a combine where there's cards related. I don't know. This, like I said, this is sort of brainstorming and getting a little crazy, but I think that's how I would brand these products a little bit differently than I think how they're branding them now. We got Kamikaze. Would love to look back. Would love to get a look at the card process. You think Fanatics will start their own card manufacturing? 2000 Bowman basketball had paper and chrome. Loved it. Yeah, I think it. I mean, Donruss and Optic is paper and chrome, so it's like I wish that they would do that with. Um, I wish they would do that with Prizm. Like I wish that they would expand that and have like a paper Prizm product. Like I said, I don't think they at this point it's can't that kind of thing can't be in the cards because of unless Tops does it, because Tops is also they also do a lot of like paper and chrome products. So it's like maybe they look at it and say they'll do it that way. I don't know. But yeah, I think when it comes to Fanatics starting a manufacturer, I don't really know. I mean, I think Fanatics is in the business of profitability and figuring out how they can make the most, unfortunately, maybe fortunately or unfortunately for the industry. I think they're in the business of profitability when it comes to what their business moves are. I mean, you can just look at what they did to how they bought Tops. Like they, instead of just saying instead of because Tops was going to go public. And I think maybe people probably know this. Like Tops was going to go public, and then Fanatics comes over the top and buys all the licenses for all the cards, which basically makes, in a way, it almost makes Tops irrelevant. Like it, it, and then they didn't go public. So like that was another move that I think Fanatics is looking at. And now we're seeing stuff about like distributors, and I'm not 100% sure if those might still be rumors. So I'm not going to really talk about it. But like Tops, or I mean, Fanatics they have shown that they're willing to make the moves to help the company make more money, if that makes sense. Like it's pretty wild, honestly, how they went about that acquisition. Like I don't know exactly. I don't know. I mean, it was pretty crazy. Um, so now actually we're going to talk about Prize Picks. So if you remember last week, I had two similar props. Prize Picks is basically player props, daily fantasy, all put together. If you are watching this, make sure you go check out the Twitter for Prize Picks, because they put out promotions all the time, which is really good. So like you can, like, I think during sometimes of the day or sometimes of the week, they put out like dollar submissions or something along those lines, like, or they do like extra bonuses for certain types of games. One of the great things about Prize Picks, in my opinion, is that fact that you can choose how you enter your lineup. So you can choose either a flex play or a power play. The power play, you have to get all of your picks right, but you get a higher win essentially if you get all of them right. The flex play allows you to get one or two wrong depending on how many picks you're putting in. So you can get if you do three, you can still get all three, but you won't get the amount that you would for the power play. But if you get one wrong, you still win essentially the matchup. So last week went 1-1 with the overall, 5-6 with the picks. The only pick that I got wrong was a Marcus Mariota interception, which if anyone was watching that Atlanta game, literally on like the last play of the game, he threw it to a defender and it went through right through the defender's hands. And I don't know if that was on purpose or what, but it was literally like he just like dropped it. It was crazy. So that was the only pick that I lost last week. This week we've got, like I said, kind of similar. We're going interceptions again. I think interceptions is one of my favorite props that I put in. I really like that. And then we're going to go receptions. I use Number Fire for my projections for daily fantasy. So if you're looking for a way to, I think Number Fire has, I've done pretty well, like with like DraftKings and then Prize Picks as well. So that's what I use. And like the projections that they have are pretty good. I would say they're, you're obviously not going to go 100% with these projections, but like when I was looking at them, these projections were a little bit, the projections in the Number Fire were higher, which means that's why I went over on all these yards. So if you want to try out Prize Picks, go to the link either in the comments or in the description. You get 100% of your 100% of your deposit up to $100, and you'll help out the show by using my link. So thank you to Prize Picks, and thank you everybody using that link. Now we're getting to the second topic of today's show. So Panini is coming out with a sneaker, or they came out with the sneaker with Reebok, which I think is pretty cool. It is the Question Mid, which is one of Allen Iverson's signature shoes. Panini has been kind of doing some of these partnerships recently. Like they came out with the action figure. I think I forget the name of the specific. I think Starting Lineup, I believe it was. They're coming out with the action figures. They've also partnered with like Funko Pops and put like cards in Funko Pops. I think it's sort of, Panini is in this really weird spot because of all the companies really that were affected probably the most by Fanatics coming in and buying the licenses and then buying Tops. Panini was probably affected the most. So it's really going to come down to like what Panini wants to do overall and how they're going to really what is their business going to be, because they have soccer and I think that's a big deal. Like Panini stickers is a big deal overseas. And that's their sticker business, and it's mainly for soccer. I don't think they do many overseas releases for other sports, but they do have some interesting next few years ahead for Panini. I think what we're going to see is the brand may end up just becoming sort of like a nostalgic card brand. And I think Panini is trying to position itself that way because they're losing all these licenses. I think having soccer, I think, is a huge deal. Like having the World Cup for specifically. I think the World Cup product, which actually that came out recently, and I think I'm going to pull up. I think I'm going to make a quick graphic with those designs because I'll go to Twitter real quick because they came out with the World Cup designs, which is actually maybe that should have been the topic here. So we're gonna quickly make that, and then we're gonna move on a bit from the sneakers into the World Cup product because that's pretty much, in my opinion, the most important thing that Panini has. Let me just. Sorry, everybody watching the live show. We've got the two Panini soccer. Oops, nope. I think we're gonna have to maybe we'll cut this part out. I mean, I think the point I'm trying to make here is that live show. Yeah, I think I might just have to cut this section out of the podcast potentially. Let's move these over, make it a little smaller. We're doing production on the fly here. Let's save this. I wish there was a way. I mean, there is. I guess there's an easier way to do this. Maybe World Cup. Save it. Bring this into, where are we here? Add overlay. Show graphics. World Cup. Okay. So I think Panini ends up becoming more of like a nostalgic brand. Their soccer cards, which, like I just said, I'm going to be, that's going to be part of this topic as well, because they just came out with that. I think soccer is going to be the most important brand for Panini because they really don't have anything else, unfortunately. I mean, they'll have maybe some NIL stuff that they'll maybe be able to do, but when it comes to football and basketball, Tops/Fanatics is going to be taking that over once the partnership or once the contract is up. So I'm actually going to get into, so here is the new World Cup design. Like I said, I think this is probably the biggest, it goes without saying it, that this is the biggest soccer product of the year, to be honest. And actually, I actually think that I'm gonna sort of reset here my thoughts and use this as the topic rather than the Panini Sneakers. Okay. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. So the just move over a little bit. So Panini World Cup design has been released. This is probably the biggest soccer product of the year. It was one of the biggest soccer products for 2018. We saw the Mbappe coming out of that product, one of the biggest cards, I think, probably the catalyst for a lot of soccer cards. Uh, Based on the checklist, there's 300 players on last year, the 2018 checklist. So there was roughly between for the popular teams, it was between 10 to 12 players. So like Argentina, Portugal, England, all those players. There was between 10 to 12 players, and then some of the less popular teams there were 8 to 10. So I think for the US, I don't know. I'll be interested to see how Panini goes about this because like last World Cup I think the US, they weren't in it, but I think they only had the Landon Donovan, I believe. I'm actually not 100% sure if they had any cards on that checklist. They may not have, but either way, I think with this upcoming checklist, I wouldn't be surprised if they change it a little bit and they add more of the US players, like if they add like a 15 to 20 checklist for the US players, or even I don't know, maybe the starting 11 and then also like 5 to 10 maybe bench players that I think are important. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a very interesting kind of topic because I've talked to people who are into soccer cards and soccer stickers in the past, and they said they didn't really care about Prizm, which, like, for me, that was kind of one of the main topics that I was talking about with soccer cards when I was first getting into making the content about soccer cards and looking into soccer cards. It was Prizm for me. It was always Prizm. It was 2014 World Cup Prizm, which has the Neymar. He has cards before that, but like 2014 was the first Prizm World Cup product. Um, there was World Cup products before that, but there wasn't a Prizm. So then 2018 comes out. There's the Mbappe. I mean, there's still even the Messi and Ronaldo. I think are still you see like autographs and high value cards from that product. So like I'm not sure they didn't come out with the only US card they came out with like sort of the marketing that I've seen is they came out with a Pulisic Ricardo Pepe uh dual autograph. So I actually Pepe is kind of on the fringe of making the team or not. So it's going to be interesting to see where, if I had to guess, they probably made the checklist like when the US was like way early on in the year. Like Pepe was one of the best players on the team, like when he first made his debut. Not as much kind of as we've been going on. He's a player that's kind of bounced around a little bit in Europe. Kind of, I wasn't really expecting it. I'm not exactly sure why. Like you see players in soccer, like not necessarily only American players, but like in general, you'll see players move around in leagues. Uh, and sometimes it's an interesting kind of conversation. Like for you do see players like Erling Haaland who make the jump from the Bundesliga to the Premier League and do great, but then you also see players like Jadon Sancho, and he was on Dortmund and then he goes to Manchester United, and now he has been kind of a bust a little bit. So like I don't know if maybe a move for him would have been going to either a smaller Premier League team or staying in the Bundesliga a little bit longer, or going to Italy or going to one of the smaller leagues before going to the EPL. Now there are a lot of US players in the EPL right now. Pepe didn't exactly, he switched teams and he switched teams again, and it hasn't really been as smooth of a process as many people within the United States probably expected it to be. Like Brendan Aronson, for example, he sort of I think he had the trajectory that a lot of people expected and that a lot of people saw. Like, I don't know exactly what I would imagine if I'm Brendan Aronson, I probably move to a better Premier League team, or, I don't know, Leeds United, like and him and Tyler Adams, maybe they even make it where it's like, they lead the team somewhere. I don't know. The Premier League is like, they had like that super league that was trying to form. That's basically what the Premier League is now. Like if you look at how much money the Premier League team spent on free agents and getting people during the transfer window, it's like astronomically larger than the second largest league. So I don't know. I mean, I think like I said, it'll be interesting to see which American players end up being on this checklist. I mean, obviously you have your Weston McKennies, your Pulisic's, you Brennan Aronson, the Tyler Adams, hopefully Serginho Dest. But then there's kind of maybe fringe players that, who knows? I don't know. I think it's going to be, I don't know when they're going to release the checklist. From what I've seen, Blowout has the release date for later on in this year. So I think it was early November, which I would, this is sort of what I was thinking. Like Panini, like they should be coming out with this product before the World Cup. So that way it's sort of being released during that World Cup time and it's being opened during the World Cup. The World Cup's, going to last obviously a little bit longer. It's going to last probably about a month. But still, like I think there is an opportunity for these releases to come out strategically around the sport's biggest events. And if it's like if you're trying to brand the product as the biggest product, it should be coming out when the biggest event is going on for the sport. Which, for the World Cup, obviously, that's going to be in Qatar. It's going to be in November into December, which they had to switch it. The whole World Cup in Qatar situation is like super sus to me, like super crazy that they are actually, it's been just all the headlines coming out. It's just been an absolute nightmare. Like even from the beginning, like they were the World Cup actually should have happened over the summer, but it didn't because obviously you can't play soccer in 150-degree heat in the middle of the desert. So that's why it's going to be going on during the winter. US playing in that bracket with England and I forget the other two teams. I think it's I think it's Poland. I think I forget. I don't remember off the top of my head who else is in that, but I think the US play I think the US plays England either on Thanksgiving or the day after Thanksgiving. So that's going to be like a must watch moment, I think, for everybody within the United States who's into soccer. I remember the 2018 World Cup. I had recently turned 21 and the games were on during the day. And I remember going to the bars and watching the games. It was really kind of interesting. It's like one of the, or no, sorry, it would have been 2014, not 2018. They didn't make the World Cup in 2018. 2014, still just recently turned 21. I was thinking in my head, like 2018, that was only 4 years ago. There's no way that I just turned 21 4 years ago. But either way, it was really interesting, and I'm super excited for the World Cup this year. Also, the jerseys. I just want to point it out. The jerseys are good. Like I think a lot of the people online on Twitter, which granted I don't know why I would be getting my opinions from Twitter, but either way, Twitter hates the jerseys. I think Instagram hates the jerseys. The jerseys are good. I just want to say that first and foremost. And I think down the road, people are going to definitely agree with me that the jerseys are good. I think people are complaining about them because they're going to complain about any jersey that comes out. I rarely see jerseys come out and people not complain about them. The white jerseys are great. The white jerseys I think are phenomenal looking. Like they look very similar to what they just had, which is another great design. The blue are okay. Let's maybe get that out of the way as well. The blue ones are okay. I wish that they had incorporated red a little bit into the design. I wish it maybe even had been like the camo sort of thing with the blue instead of black. They had done either white or red. I don't know. These Nike people, and I think the one thing that's interesting about the US jerseys is that like people are talking about them. That's like one thing that I think is a little bit underrated when it comes to marketing and jerseys and all this type of stuff. The jerseys are the worst when no one cares. That's sort of how I see a lot of these types of announcements. Like if nobody was talking about these jerseys, then that would have been a bigger fail, I think, than coming out with these jerseys that everyone says they don't like. But like I said, they're good. They're good jerseys. The white jersey is really good looking. So I don't know what people are complaining about, but either way, jerseys are good. I love this design as well. I mean, it's kind of across the board. They sort of have kept the same sort of. It's very similar to Topps flagship in a way where the design it has like the chromium border. It has a lot of the like the colored elements all throughout the design. I like the design. I mean, I think actually this was one design that I think a lot of people really liked. I put the design out on Twitter, and that actually was one of my best performing tweets in quite some time. But people really seem to like the design as well. So I think it's going to be very fun to see the checklist. From what I'm seeing, it's early November is the release date. Blowout has an early November release date. So, hopefully we get a checklist at some point in October. should probably get a checklist before the product comes out, I hope. And it's going to be, like I said, the strategy I think behind who ends up getting on the checklist, if you're an American, or whoever else they choose. I think the American part of the checklist is obviously going to be the part that I'm most interested in. The rest of the teams, I don't really. It's not that I don't necessarily care, but the American checklist is obviously the one that I've been following these American players, and this is sort of like, I think the 2026 World Cup is going to be much more important than this World Cup that's coming up. 2026 is when all these players are really going to be their prime age, and by the next World Cup, I think most of them will be sort of not past their prime, but they're going to be over the hill a little bit. So like this first World Cup is sort of like a teaser for what I think the team could do in the future. Do I think that they're going to win the World Cup? No, probably not. Do I think that they're going to make it out of the group stage? I would say I hope they make it out of the group stage into the knockout stage. If they can do that, I would say that this World Cup will be a success for the United States. And I think I don't know. I mean, it's going to come down to, I think, Pulisic, how he plays, McKinney, all these players that are playing in the top leagues are going to be extremely important. And I think we're seeing sort of the first stages of where American soccer is going to go in the future, because I've talked about this in the past. It's the MLS itself is only about 25 years old. Like I think they had their 25th anniversary either last year or the year before that. So there was no, when Pulisic or McKinney or any of these players were younger, they really owned their only options were to go overseas. Like, and maybe not them specifically, but if we're looking at Clint Dempsey, for example, maybe like players from that sort of generation, their really only option was to go overseas somewhere to play in a league. Like the MLS wasn't really a good sustainable option for any of these players. But if you look at a lot of the players in the generation that are either playing at smaller leagues now or playing in bigger leagues, most of them came through the MLS. So I think, as you see the MLS start to grow, as you see soccer in America start to grow, you're going to see better athletes gravitate more towards soccer than maybe football. There's still obviously increases in the contracts of basically every other major sport. But I think what you're going to probably see is more players gravitating towards soccer because they see, you know, I think what players, when they have enough talent, when they're good at soccer at like, and this is kind of crazy, but when they're good at soccer at between 12 to 14 years old, there's probably scouts and people who are advising them what they should be doing at that age. Like for Pulisic, he went over to Dortmund, he went over to Germany at like 15 years old. So it's like, there's options for players now at 14, 15, 16, 17 years old to play in the MLS and then kind of take the next step. And it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the MLS because you do see players coming over here. You have Gareth Bale, who's now playing for LA. It's not just a league where people are going from, it's people are coming to. Now, Gareth Bale, I think, is one of the good examples of a player who isn't towards the end of his career coming over here. Wayne Rooney, for example, was a player who sort of was at the end of his career when he ended up coming over here. He's the coach now for DC United, which I think is also really good. I don't know. I just think American soccer, it's always something that's growing. And World Cup is going to be super important. And this product, like I said, is going to be the biggest product for soccer this year. And it's probably going to be the biggest product for soccer until the next World Cup comes, or until the next World Cup product comes out in 2026, when that World Cup is going to be in the United States. Check some comments here. We got Joe. What's up, Joe? Thank you for the comment there. First time commenter, I believe. We got Jordan Pefik. Should be the starting striker for the U.S., but I fear I fear going to be with a plethora of wingers like Pulisic, Reyna, Aronson. Yeah, I mean, I think that the strikers Americans have right now are like next level. Like Reyna is, he's probably going to be like what Pulisic was for this team in 2030, maybe, because he's still young. And I think that 2030 World Cup for him is probably going to be his prime World Cup, which is even, honestly, it's only 2022 right now. It's crazy to even think that like 2030 is a year when players are going to be, looking for their prime World Cup days. But either way, I mean, I think, yeah, there's so much talent. There's so much young talent. I think, young talent with potential. That's sort of how I see it, because one thing that I've learned from watching these US games is that like they play well against the good teams, but then they play poorly against the bad teams. They play up to the competition. It's really sort of it's interesting. I don't know exactly why. Like I don't know why they do that, but that's sort of one of the things I've definitely noticed with this team for sure. So we're gonna move into the last topic. Um, Beckett finally does something, anything. It's really great to see that they're trying to get into some sort of different thing. So they are partnering, or they bought a company called Get Knox, which I looked into it. It's kind of like it almost seems like it's trying to be a social media for cards. Like it's like a tracking system that there's also, it looks like there's a forum that it's also like you can find different cards. I think it's a good step in the right direction for Beckett because I think Beckett, in my opinion, has sort of they've they've tried to stay the course. They haven't really gone super crazy. Like PSA, it almost seems like PSA is just grabbing at straws everywhere. Like they don't, and I think that they do know what they're doing, but it seems like every move they make is almost counterintuitive to the previous move, where Beckett has literally just almost made no moves, in my opinion. And I think one of the reasons, honestly, it could be that people are still grading RPAs and like expensive cards with Beckett. Like you see most of like the high end national treasures, the like high end cards are still being graded by Beckett. So like they're probably looking at it and saying, well, what changes do we need to make if people are still choosing our service over PSA for some of these high end cards? And I don't know exactly what their structure is for their upcharges. Like if you're grading an RPA, like I am not 100% sure what they're doing when it comes to like if it's a one of one or if it's whatever the RPA is, like what they're doing upcharges. But yeah, so it's good to see that Beckett is trying to make some sort of move to kind of move into a content sort of thing. Like we've seen with PSA, like they started a podcast. They've been putting out way more data as content, which I think probably has to do with Golden and Card Ladder kind of all being together. They have all that data, so PSA has been really good at coming out with more content, and it seems like this is sort of what Beckett is trying to do. I think that they're trying to build a platform, or this platform it's still kind of in the beginning stage. Like if you go to their Twitter, it's still sort of like in the early stages of what the company I think will end up being. Uh, so when I looked into it, like I said, it's basically a company that you can track all the prices of your cards. You can find new cards, and then it said something like build a community around your cards, which I do think is very interesting. I think it's kind of almost like Reddit in a way, where Reddit has a bunch of different subreddits about different topics. Like maybe if they almost do it like that, where it's like subcategories or sub players. I don't know exactly how they're going to do it. I think it's still in the beta phase. So I think there's still like early access that's being given. So it's not in the full release stage yet. Um, but from a content perspective, I think this will give I think it'll give Beckett maybe more of an opportunity to do more content. I think it might even give Beckett more specific insights, because I think if I'm comparing this to some of the other, like with PSA, like PSA doesn't necessarily have they do have they do like the blowout forums in a way. It's almost kind of like that. It seems like they're trying to like they're taking like the card ladder feature of like keeping your collection, and then also some of the data. They're trying to get like a Reddit or a blowout forums all on this one platform. So it's going to be interesting to see what Beckett's overall plans are for the future. I don't know for sure kind of what they want to do. Like I said, I feel like with the fact that they get all these RPAs, they really have just looked at this situation and said, we don't really need to make any huge major changes, because people are still grading with us. Like, even if people don't like the fact that there's not much communication, or they don't like the fact that they don't really go super crazy when it comes to content like some of these other companies. If people are still using the service, if they're still using the high end part of the service, why would they want to cater towards grading base cards? I guess is one thing, because like PSA, a lot of their data is base card related. So it's like it's a very interesting kind of dynamic when it comes to grading right now, because I think SGC is also sort of in the business of grading base cards, and I think you're seeing other grading companies come in and with the base cards in mind, where For if you're looking at a collector, you're looking at someone who actually has a high-end RPA, I'd say 70, 75, 25, 75% of the time they're going to go to Beckett. I don't think there are many high-end RPAs that are just graded by PSA. So overall, that's sort of why I think Beckett has not changed too much compared to like what PSA has done. Obviously, with PSA, with the backlog and with all that type of stuff, they have to cater towards the people who are sending in the base cards because that's, I guess, their business model. They're looking at it more from a volume standpoint, where Beckett is looking at it more of a type of RPA high end, maybe even autographs, for example. They're looking at it from more of a high end standpoint, where PSA is looking at more of a volume standpoint, which I like. I mean, I think it's PSA is very interesting because they do have that kind of base that's like the base cards and the lower end kind of slabs, but then they also have high end stuff that they've been grading recently. So it's like it's definitely a very interesting combination of what PSA is trying to do, like versus what Beckett's trying to do. I think that they've definitely taken two completely different approaches. I think SGC has been kind of in the middle a little bit. I think SGC has really, they've sort of gone a little bit more towards what PSA has done, like changing prices, coming out with more content. They don't really grade too many RPAs. Like I think that they did do, although there was a video that came out recently with SGC that was, I think they graded the one of one immaculate to a RPA. So that was part of a reel, which I thought was pretty cool. But like overall, PSA, SGC are probably more base card heavy, where Beckett is definitely going to be more RPA heavy, which is, I think that's what's affecting their marketing and why they're doing the stuff that the way that they're doing it. I think if we're looking at the top three grading companies, obviously, I think it goes PSA, Beckett, SGC. SGC has definitely come into that conversation more over the past year or so than Beckett has really done to stay in that conversation. But I think but at the same time, like I think you could argue both sides. Like, does Beckett even need to do the stuff that SGC and PSA are doing if people are still choosing them for RPAs? Like, are they, if they're still choosing Beckett to grade their higher end cards, like, do they even really need to go out of their way to try and make any changes? I think that's maybe the conversation that I would guess is being had at Beckett. I think Beckett is also sort of a nostalgic brand a little bit because they were sort of the first the first sports card magazine company as well. Like they had all, like if you talk to anybody who's maybe getting back into sports cards or who was into sports cards like a way back, way before the internet, which isn't actually way back, that's like 20 years ago. But either way, like if you talk to anybody who was into sports cards back then, the Beckett price guide was what eBay comps are right now. So I feel like there's a way that Beckett could make almost a comeback from a nostalgic standpoint. I don't think they necessarily could do the price guide anymore, but I almost think if they tried to expand their magazine business, I think that would be kind of a cool option. And maybe that's what, maybe the fact that they're getting into, the acquisition of this type of company, maybe that is something that they're looking to do. Maybe they're looking at other opportunities to expand the brand, which, like I said, they may not even want to expand the brand. I think it's kind of the conversation of like sports cards. It's like collectors were kind of in sports cards for so long, and there wasn't, anything super crazy that was coming out. There weren't any uh, crazy number of products, crazy number of autographs, crazy prices. And then all of a sudden, it's like everybody's into sports cards and everybody is driving up the prices. They're increasing the product, which is maybe not exactly what people want. But I think it's maybe similar where it's like people maybe didn't want so much media attention, honestly, on sports cards because all that did was increase the prices and brought in people that were maybe not in it for the reasons that they were in it, which, like I said, I don't necessarily disagree with those people, but at the same time, like I'm one of the people that kind of came in that probably was somebody that I'm a media person. I mean, that's sort of, I think I buy and sell cards occasionally, but I'm definitely more of a media person than I am like a buyer and seller, like we're reacting to the news. So maybe people looked at that and said that they don't like the media people, the influencers. I put influencers in quotation because it's like people will just there's something called a straw man argument, which is like somebody who has a argument or they see something that they don't like, they make up somebody that's the argument. So they make up, the influencers did this, or the influencers have ruined sports cards or whatever. But they make up essentially what the influencers have done, so that way they have an argument because they know that other people are going to agree with their argument, regardless of what it even is, to be honest. But either way, I think Beckett coming in, I think it's going to be really cool to see sort of what Beckett has plans for, if they're going to go on a limb and, make any changes, or if this is sort of going to be like an extension of, the blowout form, which I think if I, if maybe if I'm Golden or if I'm another company, I'm looking at the blowout form and maybe trying to buy it somehow. I don't know how, and that's sort of a crazy thing because then you probably would have to buy Blowout, which isn't really realistic because they're like one of the biggest sports card retailers. But either way, I think the forum itself, I just think that there's interesting data that comes from that forum, and I think if Beckett is trying to create something that's similar to that, they're probably going to get some interesting data, and it's going to be really cool to see what Beckett decides to do with this new platform that they just bought. All right. And that's it. That's all for the show. We'll skip back to here. Yep, remember Prize Picks. Use the link in the bio and use the link everywhere, in the comments, all that type of stuff. If you're looking, it should be in the YouTube comments. So if you're listening to this in the podcast, make sure you go check out there. That's all I've got for today's episode. Thank you all for listening, watching, however you are consuming this, and I will see you in the next one.